I'm going to teach you how to master no ABS on the F1 23 game. We're going to be talking about trail braking, weight distribution, brake bias, cadence braking, and how to master all of these techniques all into one to maximize your braking performance on the F1 23 game. With that being said, let's hit the track. I'll see you there. The first thing we're going to talk about mastering is trail braking. You might ask, what is trail braking? Trail braking is the art of hitting 100% brake pedal, as you can see indicated with that red bar on the screen right now, and trailing back off to 0% gradually, slowly, and progressively. The reason this is important in a Formula 1 car, in general, high downforce cars as well, F4, F3, F2, F1, anything with moderate to high downforce, this is required to go fast. Is simply put, the faster you're going, the more downforce you have on the car. In fact, multiple tons of downforce is being produced at 200 miles an hour with a Formula 1 car. And simply put as well, the slower you are going, the less downforce and grip ability your car has as a result of that. As in a very simple put term, weight on a car generated through downforce equals grip. This is why you can go through Magazine Beckett, Pouon, Eau Rouge, just to name a few corners, so quickly without the car sliding around. But when you get to a low speed corner like here in the first and second corner of Canada, you can see the car will actually start to move around, even though I've got less throttle implied and less braking implied at the same time. Just simply put, there is less grip. So, as you're arriving towards a corner, as I'm going to show you in this next braker zone here, you will hit the brake to 100% and then gradually come off the brake as you get closer and closer to apex, or you can think of it as you're slowing down the car closer and closer to the apex. The distance towards the apex does not actually matter with the braking input. The critical factor is actually how fast you're going. As the faster you're going, the more braking input you can have. Something that is very critical to blend into your technique, though, is the ability to keep your wheel dead center straight within the braking zone. If you do not have it dead center straight for as long as possible in the braking zone, you will risk locking up the front tire, and this is where a lot of mistakes can happen while trying to learn no ABS within a Formula 1 car or any car in general. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the brake bias to 65% to exaggerate this as much as possible and show you the effect. So I'm going to be coming down to the final chicane. I'm going to brake in a straight line. You can see the car starts to lock up actually as I get to low speed, but generally, as I could show you on the replay camera, the front tires were not locking up, the car was under control, and you can see, yeah, in the majority of the braking zone, only until I got to a low speed, the car was completely under control and the front tires were not locking up at all. As you can see, there we go. The car was nice and controlled. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go still 65% on the brake bias, and I'm going to turn the wheel 10 degrees, and you can see the car instantly locks up basically as soon as I start putting the steering input into it. The reason for that being is that when you are driving in a straight line, and I'm going to use my phone to basically show the point here. So think of the car as a flat platform. And when you're driving in a straight line, the car is completely flat. I'm going to put my webcam to a bigger picture so you can see it as well. So when you're driving in a straight line, the car is completely flat. When you're braking, the weight of the car goes towards the front. When you're accelerating, the weight of the car goes to the rear. And you can see forward and back, you can see the exaggeration there. But when you start turning, the car, if you're braking and turning, the car will go like this if you're turning to the right, and if you're turning to the left, it will turn like this. In ideal braking positions, you want the car to be completely flat, and this is why the steering being straight as possible is critical, because when the steering is straight, the car will be flat and will have equal weight distribution over the front tires to maximize the grip possibilities and give you the best prediction possible of the car's grip. If you start turning, what eventually you will need to do for the corner, but you want to delay it as much as possible, the more that you turn, the more the weight will start to go and go and go to that front left. Although the front left will have loads of grip, the front right will have no grip. And this is where you see Formula One drivers and drivers within video games as well start locking up that front right axle. Well, at least it's my right anyway, from my position looking towards the example of the car, aka my phone. The same is true also when going on the throttle. If you turn the car around, and now it's the back of the car effectively, when you accelerate out of a corner in a straight line, i.e. off a start-finish line, for example, for the start of the race, the car will squat down and it will be giving equal grip. As soon as you start turning to one direction, it will start putting more grip to one axle or the other. So hopefully you found that pretty good to explain and understand the motions of the car. In simple terms, while the car is completely flat and it is not under any weight disruption or weight distribution, you will have the most predictable and equal grip possible. When you start putting input into the wheel, like I'm going to do now, you will start to lose that predictability from the car and you will lose overall grip, traction, purchase as a result of that, equaling an easier ability to lock up the front tyres. Something that is definitely worth talking about is the brake bias within the game, because even top level drivers, if we are running a bad braking bias, hence 70% that I'm going to show you on this example, we will lock up, we will be slow, we will be inconsistent, and I'm going to show you the example of this. And basically keeping the wheel straight, you can see it's okay, but as soon as I start to turn, the front tyre starts to lock up and understeer. This situation will be exaggerated more in the low speed corners because of less grip, as I mentioned earlier. Coming down to turn 1, while the car's in a straight line, but as soon as I start turning, it just locks up the front tyres, and even in the low speed, I have no grip and ability to rotate the car. And that is just because the front tyres do not have the grip capability to deal with 70% of the braking load towards the front tyres. It needs to be more even. So, what I recommend on the F1 game for starting out and learning no ABS is to be using 56% on the brake bias. The reason for 56% is the ability and consistency within the car to load its weight distribution more evenly, and you can see the car progressively turns into apex much nicer, as I'm also going to show you in turn 1 and turn 2. Down the gears, and you can see a little bit of stability, a little bit of understeer, but nothing too bad. F1 esports drivers will run the brake bias lower and lower as a result of trying to extract the maximum lap time possible. And as you get more comfortable with the car and get more in tune and more in flow and get more confident also with your braking technique ability, you will start to be able to push the brake bias more rearward. I'm going to show you some turns that will be extremely effective in. We are here at Silverstone, a great track to highlight the differences between big braking zones that might require higher brake percentage bias and also the high-speed sections such as Macca's and Beckett's that will allow using a lower brake bias to get natural rotation from the car from the braking ability. Through turn 2 and turn 3 there, generally the whole first sector, I'm running 56% brake bias, and coming into Brooklands, you can see still using 56% brake bias, and the car is nice and predictable, rotating while not being snappy or locking up the front tyres and becoming unpredictable on the rear axle. Whereas we're coming up to Max and Beckett's, where I'm going to be running 54% brake bias. Through Cops Corner, easily flat, don't need the brake bias through here. But as we come up to Max and Beckett's, we're only doing small dabs of the brakes, and it's a very high downforce corner, what means there's more grip, what means I can use more rear brake bias to get the downforce of the car. Saying that, I still invalidated the corner, so ignore that little bit there. The same is true as we're coming up into Stowe Corner, very high speed corner, which means there's more downforce on the car. But as we're coming up to Club Corner to end off the lap, you can see as the downforce goes away from the car, I was running 54%, the car becomes really unstable and very snappy. So what is the takeaway from this? The takeaway from this is the fact that when you're running in lower speed corners and going, I would generally say anywhere below 4th gear, you want to be about 56% brake bias. When you're going through higher speed corners, 6th, 7th, 8th gear, you want to sort of be around 54 brake bias, 53 if you want to push the limits. And this should allow you to have a good, stable car. So to summarize, what have we been talking about today? We've been talking about how you need to hit the brake and bleed off slowly to make sure that you can do the braking technique or trail braking correctly. We have been talking about the brake bias that will allow you to be more comfortable, consistent, and confident in each individualized style of braking zone. Remember, if the corner is going down to a low speed corner, you want to use higher brake bias as you get lower on the car speed. Like I say, anywhere below 4th gear generally, such as turn 2 here at Silverstone, run roughly 56% brake bias. If you're going through higher speed corners, 6th, 7th, 8th gear corners, I would be running around 54, 53% brake bias to help get that natural rotation from the car. The faster the car goes, the more grip you have. The final point that I'm going to talk about is cadence braking. Cadence braking is the art within the braking technique to release the brake pedal gradually. The final point that I'm going to talk about is cadence braking. What is cadence braking? Cadence braking is the ability and the braking technique to release the brake pedal if your tyres have locked up. And why is this critical? It's critical because while the tyres are locked up, you will not be getting braking performance. And you, of course, need braking performance to slow down for the corner. So what happens? I'm going to show you a perfect example of this. Watch my red bar in the middle left-hand side of the screen as we'll be coming up to Club Corner, the next corner after this. I'm going to purposely lock up the front tyres and release the brake pedal to regain traction and control. You can see the front tyres locked up and I released the brake pedal to get that control back with the front tyres. It's so critical. The same is true with the rear tyres as well. If you start to lock up, release the brake pedal. I'm going to do this a few more times so you can see. I'm going to hit 100% brake pressure and go, oh no, I've locked up. And you can see I released the brake pedal to get control back under the front tyres or the rear tyres, depending on the scenario that you're facing. As soon as you have got the control back underneath the tyres and they are not locking up and not losing grip anymore, you can reapply the brake pressure. So one more time, I'm going to show you. The front tyres are going to lock up, I'm going to release the brake pressure and go back to where I think the grip threshold is. You can see, big lock up, then release the brake pressure and back on the brake pressure to slow down the car and get it back under control. At some points, you're going to have to accept that you're going to miss the apex, but it's better to miss the apex and do damage limitation than to miss the apex and go flying off the track because you could not recontrol the lockup of your racing car. So with that being said, we've covered the fundamentals of braking without ABS. And that has been trail braking, weight distribution, the ability to know what brake bias you want to be going towards in each individualized style of corner, and of course the cadence braking, what happens if you do look up the front tire, because it's racing. Inevitably we all will make errors and look up the front tires or rear tires even. I've done it plenty of times and I do it multiple times per race. Sometimes in racing it's not about being perfect, it's about recovering from your mistakes as fast as possible, and that often is where races are won. With that being said, I've been Brendon Leigh. Thank you so much for watching the video. And if this video has been helpful for you, be sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to see any other tutorials or anything else you'd find helpful, be sure to post in the comments and I'll be making that video for you ASAP. Thanks so much for watching. Glad you was actually. Ciao, ciao. Bye bye.